Thank you, Jimmy, and thank you, Vox 51, for inviting me here, and hi to everyone that made it to the last talk of the day. Um, so I mean, even though it's not about computer vision. I mean, it is about kind of the role of AI in the areas of recruiting and hiring, and I hope that you find it engaging and helpful. Um, it will be less academic and kind of more about uh, product opportunities and landscapes. And so I'm one of the co-founders of a company called Brief, an early stage startup working to improve several phases of the hiring workflow. I also represent AI 2030. It's a global foundation that's promoting AI for the good of humankind. Um, and we'll keep it high level for this talk. If anyone is interested in talking more about any of our AI models and about hiring in general, like please connect with me over LinkedIn. But this talk is not a plug for the company. It's just kind of more of a passion project for now. I wanted to talk about the topic that I feel strongly about, and along with the small group of individuals I've been hanging out with, why hiring is so hard, and we will focus on some of the common biases that make it even more difficult and very hard to fix. We'll argue that unlocking data, information, and transparency is the way to move forward. And finally, I'll highlight some AI tools that are actually kind of improving the landscape, or actually trying to improve the landscape. And if we have time at the end, I'll spend a slide or two about what we are doing. So forward. Yeah, so I mean, it was this, as I said, this talk is about getting things off my chest. Some of us, we have been spending more than a decade about, observing, being frustrated by subpar hiring practices, spending time within our capacity, within our organizations about trying to fix it by implementing, better tools and better workflows. And especially around the COVID years in 2020, when everything changed and things like everything was going to change drastically, we started thinking about what AI can do about it. And you know is when you get when everything changes drastically, that's when you try to think about making drastic changes yourself, right? And but know that this was still kind of pre-OpenAI, pre-LLM type of world. And um you know it was still for something as nuanced as hiring and job interviews. Some of the AI problems seemed really hard. And now we are in a different world, however, right? Like, for example, if you think about conversational AI, it is hard to imagine there are many other kind of use cases or value unlocks, for something more than understanding job interviews, both live and offline. And so here we are. So we want to talk about it, and we hope that more people will be talking about this in the coming weeks and months. Um, and some of this is something already, but it is helpful to talk about the problem out loud, and it gives us a structure of thought, acknowledging the problem, right? The reason we talk about bias in this scenario is to set up the utility of AI to make things better. Now, for AI itself, there is a lot of concern, a legitimate concern about biases within AI, right? And for something as crucial as making hiring decision, any AI application will have to be extra vigilant to remain responsible, remain ethical. But we have to acknowledge the biases that are already there that affect the pipelines of making hiring decisions in so many ways, and the impact of it. I mean, any type of systematic favoritism or discrimination results in you know in not only in kind of social injustice, but also within the company. It perpetuates inequalities and even makes your company looks bad, and it makes it difficult to attract and retain top talents. Not to mention, you probably have seen graphs like this over the internet, all over the internet, that tries to estimate the real cost of a mishire. If you make mistakes in hiring, it's not just kind of what the salary you paid at the training you paid, and it perpetuates further, much further. And for a 100K employee quickly mishiring and firing, it goes the cost is over $1 million for a company. And that estimate excludes the moral kind of the company moral and productivity issues. And this is like not a random number. Like, I mean, this comes from a very reputable source. Like, if any of you is interested in learning about hiring methodologies, like one of the core books to read is a book called The Power of Who by Smart and Street. I encourage you to look it up, and it establishes a lot of good methodologies for useful methodologies for interviewing, methodologies for interviewing, right? So this comes from that, like, so anyway, coming back to the point. So we have so we know that the cost of mishire is hard, very high. We know that it's just bad for your company, bad for your company morale and your company's PR. So why is still there? Why is we still talk about, like, biases? Like, why it hasn't been fixed yet? Like, the Cornell DEI program, like, it starts by saying that, despite years of kind of legal reforms and social reforms, nobody has been able to do much about it. And it still remains a problem. And one of the reasons why that is because that this, there are, sometimes there are gender biases, sometimes there are other types of biases. For example, if you talk to any recruiter, they will tell you, any good recruiter, they will tell you that, when you write your job description, if you write, like, 15, 20 must-have requirements, a lot of women are just going to skip that job and not apply for it. A lot of minorities will not apply for it, right? So, but there are other biases than that are generally unconscious biases, and that are very difficult to fix. And uh, many of these examples you probably have seen in your organizations, within, like, when you are hiring, and or, like, when you are within an interviewing, right? Somebody from your interview team comes and tells you, oh, I had a great conversation with this guy, very cheerful. We got along so well. Like, just forgot to interview that person. Like, just, going for the so-called culture fit and just having a good feeling about a person, right? Like, this is very close to what is called an affinity bias. There are situations when you say that, like, oh, I couldn't really tell, but Laura and then Samir liked him, so, and that's good enough for me. Like, it's known as the bandwagon effect. Where, and then there is the reverse of that. You see, like, somebody raised a red flag while others said good things, and you're like, well, Ali is the only one who is raising the red flag, but I think she's biased. Where you're basically thinking that you are less biased than somebody else, which is itself a blind spot bias. Stereotyping, I won't have to give you examples. Obviously, there is stereotyping. I personally I have been a perpetrator of what is called the present bias. Is that, let's just, like, getting frustrated, and let's just say that, let's just hire someone already, right? Like, this is formally known as hyperbolic discounting. It's like where you discount kind of a larger later payoff by taking a smaller sooner payoff. It's also known as present bias. And then there is something also, like, sometimes it comes that when you cannot make up your mind, you just go for somebody who is more believable to your organization. That, well, what, I'm not really sure, but can't really go wrong with someone with so much experience, and, like, this and that. These are all, like, we are kind of here, sitting here, labeling them as kind of biases and talking about them. But if you put if you are in the hiring manager's shoes, sometimes these are very hard to get over. You cannot blame someone if somebody had a really bad experience with somebody, a specific type of candidates, like a hiring gone really bad. It's your job in the line too. They may not want to hire a similar person again, and sometimes you have to rush. So, like, if you put on the hat of a hiring manager or an interviewing team, or even your people's leader, some of these are very, very deeply ingrained and hard to evaluate, which makes it hard to fix, right? And overall, like, so that's what it comes down to. Hiring is hard. Or, we end up making a lot of mistakes when it comes to hiring. Now, let's kind of turn our focus to kind of the positive part of the story, right? Is that large surveys have shown that the way forward, really, to cut through these biases and cut through this all the BS is is a more fact-based and data-driven approach, more transparency, trying to understand more about the job itself, trying to understand more about the candidates, and really kind of just have a transparent process to do the matching, right? And that's where kind of data and AI can obviously come in, and it's not surprising, right? But then you kind of start thinking further that like, okay, exactly where, right? Like exactly what we can do, what needs to improve. Like, first start out with what needs to improve. Like, we have interviewed, like, in the last 6 months, conducted like market research with over 50 hours of interviewing so far with industry players, from hiring managers to recruitment industry people, uh, to kind of companies, kind of HR heads and so on. These are the things, almost like a word cloud has popped up to us over and over. Attracting the right candidates, hiring fast, interview planning, um, better focusing on candidate experience, creating a strong brand for the employer. Interview training is a big one. And obviously there are some core things like understanding how can we understand candidates better from their interviews and from their CVs. How can you collect feedback? Like 5 people are giving me feedback from 5 interviewers of my team. As a hiring manager, how can I make the most of it? What's the effective kind of scoring strategy? All of this popped out and makes us think, obviously, that there is not one silver bullet, right? Like you just have to uh, improve it, different aspects of the recruiting process to just get better, like surface more truth. Um, and if you look into those, I'm highlighting some of them where it's not hard to see where data and AI can take a step. Like, if you take interview planning, for example. Given a job requisition, a hiring manager can painstakingly plan out what questions to ask, and that will have them the information that they need for that job, and what to listen for. A good hiring manager will probably do that, by spending 3 to 5 hours of their time. But it is deterrent, like, it takes so much time, so much effort, and AI can definitely help and make it a much easier task, right? um, on the flip side, like, screening for a pool of candidates, right? uh, it's 2024, right? We got 800 applicants, and you need to shortlist uh to 25, right? At this day and age, you can think of, like, there should be a better way of doing that than some kind of automated keyword matching or whatever is going on that is severely affecting, like, you are in a risk of kind of rejecting some strong candidates. um Conducting like live interviews, when whether you consider yourself a great interviewer or not, interviews can go in as unexpected ways. Job interviews, there are several kind of runaway answers where you're not really getting any evidentiary data, and there are times you have to cover 5 topics in 30 minutes, and there are times you need to speed up, and there are times you need to slow down and ask a follow-up question and dive deeper. It is great to have an expert co-pilot that will help you and guide you through it. Um, and again, whether or not you're a good interviewer, as you are interviewing and listening to a story, and like a story after another story, you almost need a second brain to attribute each story to a candidate's skills and competencies, right? Like, this story maps to work ethics, or that story maps to strategic vision, delegation, leadership, self-awareness, whatever that is. And if someone maps all that for you, usually you see during an interview for any candidate a pattern emerging, and that is very valuable data unlock, right? Over the candidate's history, like, this is, it's like an x-ray that surfaces the information that are otherwise easy to miss. So these are all kind of areas that you can think about. I'm just going to rush through this a little bit. But it's not hard to imagine where data and AI can play a role, play some roles here. And if you kind of layer it over the different stages of the recruitment process, you can see that there is room for improvement in all, like, um, throughout the hiring workflow, right? Um, so that's so the good news is that some of this may seem familiar to you, because there are tools that exist today, and some are coming up very new, and some people have started maybe 3-4 years ago, and they're taking off now with taking advantage of the new wave of AI. I'll mention some of them, and hopefully you find, like, whether you were hiring or looking for jobs, like, you find them helpful. Or, like, these are kind of AI-based tools. First, I talk about the tools for employers. Um, these two are the first two ones I think that are most popular. BrightHire and MetaView. Two of them are popular for two different reasons. BrightHire has a suite of products, generating hiring plans and interview notes, and they have a live interview co-pilot as well. Whereas MetaView is very simple. It has a simple and universal appeal of, it simply takes interview notes and generates AI generated summary. I mean, I see people use these two tools quite a bit. There's some new ones are, I mean, Pillar HR, which has interview co-pilot, live interview annotations of, like, like stuff we are mentioning about, like, we're talking about, like, okay, this is the candidate taking initiative. This story is talking about leadership and so on. Interview insights and further interview intelligence. Matheson is a cool tool. Like, they are mainly in the DEI space. One company I have used for, they used to use like a cool feature of this tool, where you can upload, if you have a job description, you can upload it before you post the job description and get it scored for inclusive language. And they have a host of other tools as well. And these are like, and then there are some of the newer ones. This is, let's see, Riley AI, which they call themselves relationship autopilot, which is basically a lead generation tool to find quality candidates and kind of just building that relationship, engaging with them, Salesforce type, you can say. Tori.ai is building almost autonomous recruiting agents that will find candidates, try to engage via email, handle scheduling and all the time-taking stuff. Good or bad, like, that's their things that they're trying to do. And of course, they have a job marketplace as well. The candidate side of, the candidate side of tools are a little more sparse and new. I mean, there are some, there is offer.ai that will scrape company sites for job listing. Like, there are company sites, companies that don't post in top, in the top job boards like LinkedIn or something. So it'll scrape like tens of thousands of companies and surface the jobs that you don't find on job boards. There's Till HQ that helps you build custom resume, custom cover letters and per job and so on, resume summaries. Now, I mean, it is interesting that, like, I mean, and there are, of course, other kind of resume builder type of tools online. You can find some of them good, some of them not as good. The candidate side of this marketplace is a little bit fragmented and murky. Like, you can I mean, one thing, of course, is to you can imagine that there is more money in building B2B enterprise products for companies and large corporations, and whereas the DTC product for customers, like for job seeking candidates, there's less money and it's harder to grow such products. And the LLMs have shrunk a lot of the barriers to entry for such products. But there's something else also to be kept in mind here, for good or for bad. Like, it is nice to have tools that make it easier for candidates to apply for hundreds of jobs at the same time. But as many candidates use the tool, that increases kind of the spamminess and it can essentially be a disservice to the candidates. So you have to be careful about that. Similarly, if I find it really cool technology to scrape and aggregate the jobs, like using like AI-based scraping and data organization tools that are not on job boards. But what happens to the ecosystem when it scales? And that is not very pleasant, right? It's a lot of companies don't put their jobs on job boards intentionally because it means more spam for them. They have to sift through thousands of applications. And if they do like someone and want to engage, the engagement rate is low because often candidates don't remember what if he or she even applied for that role, right? So while the tech is cool, like, the AI has the power to help. And the industry will eventually have to converge to this new normal and kind of carefully chart its course to see kind of which tools are kind of most helpful for the ecosystem. So I'm at the 20 minutes mark. So and given that it's being like, it's just quite a long session already. I'll just move on to just a quick word about what we are building, and so basically how just building something called brief.io, where it's a candidate facing tool. The candidates can get interviewed. We have kind of a specific interview methodology to surface the chapters of candidates past, and then we'll basically uncover the stories, the important bits of it. We'll prepare a brief for you that will include your best skills and as well as highlight video reel from that interview that speaks to the job or the types of job that you are applying for, like a 2 to 3 minute highlight video reel. There is some AI, obviously some AI involved in this, like beyond just transcribing and speaker diarization. Once we have the interview transcript, like we do have to detect, like, kind of structure the interview. What are the new like kind of chapters or explorations that we're talking about. When it's just like follow-up questions, we have to identify stories and classify the types of stories. If it's a positive story, negative story, stories around departure, stories around people management. We annotate skills and competencies. We rank stories for a job requisition, pick segments with evidentiary data. The words that are in blue and bold here, these are basically specific concept of this interview methodology called top grading methodology, which is very, very effective in surfacing this kind of information. And then finally, kind of this, like, once we have the pieces to put together, this is something like we haven't built yet. Like we are thinking, but there are some third-party tools that help us do it. The process is manual at that step, which is kind of the video editing. Like even if after you get the segments, if you just put them together, they're a little bit choppy. Like it's just nice to give a whole, like a better production effect. You can put together videos nicely so that you get a kind of kick out of watching it. And I'll stop here. And if you have any questions, this it's really you can connect with me over LinkedIn or feel free to ask any questions. I will, I don't know, I cannot see let me see.
So while you're bringing up the Q&A, I did post your LinkedIn link in the chat. So if you want to connect with what's happening over at brief.io, you can do that over LinkedIn. But it does look like you have two questions. I think two are mostly comments, but maybe there's a question in there that I'm not seeing.
Sure. First, that you just submitted referral to brief.io sounds good. We'll be sure to get back to you. And then, do you have any services for a professional returning to workspace? And I mean, there are tools out there. I mean, at brief.io is just generally about helping and presenting the best your best self. Like, we can definitely, like, create a brief for you, which will highlight your past, even though, like, even if you're returning after some time, we have very solid methodology to to surface, like, kind of valuable information from your past. But as well, like, I think there are mentorship networks where you can probably find people in similar situation as you, and support groups as well. Hope that helps. We can explore further if you want to. Okay, thanks so much for interesting talk and presenting these tools. I am an organizational psychologist and statistician. Very nice to see the combination of the stuff. Thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, everyone, just if you want to talk further, I'm very passionate about this, so feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'll if you need help or if you just need to discuss, if you have ideas, just talk to me. And thank you very much.